Horizon post office scandal saw hundreds of innocent people sent to prison. People like a former constituent of mine who went to jail for 3 years. Now, during this scandal, the leader of the Liberal Democrats was the minister in charge of the post office. In charge of the post office. This is the same Liberal Democrat leader who in the past has called for the resignation of over 30 prominent people in this country who have made mistakes in their job. So does the Prime Minister agree with me that the leader of the Lib Dems should take his own advice and start by clearing his desk, clear his diary and clear off?
Mr. Speaker, this is one of the greatest miscarriages of justice in our nation's history. People who worked hard to serve their communities had their lives and their reputations destroyed through absolutely no fault of their own. The victims must get justice and compensation. Sir Win Williams' inquiry is undertaking crucial work to expose what went wrong, and we've paid almost £150 million in compensation to over 2,500 victims. But today I can announce that we will introduce new primary legislation to make sure that those convicted as a result of the Horizon scandal are swiftly exonerated and compensated. We will also introduce a new upfront payment of £75,000 for the vital GLO group of postmasters. And can I thank my honourable friend, the member for Thirsk and Malton, for all his hard work on this issue. He will set out more details to the House shortly. We will make sure that the truth comes to light, we right the wrongs of the past, and the victims get the justice they deserve.
We should smash the gangs, process the claims, and end hotel use. That's our plan. And unlike the Prime Minister, I believe in it. But
I'm going to hear the questions. I don't want interruptions, please. It's very important. It's a very important topic, and I take it seriously. I hope members also wish to start taking it seriously. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, last year he started the year saying he was Mr. Steady. Then at his conference he was Mr. Change. Now he's flipped back to Mr. More of the same. It doesn't matter how many relaunches, flip-flops he does, he'll always be Mr. Nobody. And here's the tragedy of his leadership. He spends the whole time trying to convince people not to believe their own eyes, pretending that debt is falling, that the economy is going gangbusters, the NHS is in great shape. When he finally finds something he was right about, the Rwanda gimmick, he can't even take credit for it. When's he going to stop pretending that up is down, that black is white, admit that whether it's the economy, immigration, the NHS, he has failed?
I'm glad he brought up our schools, because there's nothing more important than ensuring our children get a world-class education. And that's why I'm pleased that, in spite of Labour opposing every reform that we made, our children are now the best readers in the Western world, Mr. Speaker. But he's right that attendance is important, and that's why we're investing millions of pounds more to provide support for absent pupils. We launched a national campaign, and just this week we've doubled the number of attendance hubs to support over 1,000 at the most vulnerable schools. But I am surprised to hear him raise that topic, because from longer lockdowns or voting against our minimum service laws, his priority has always been keeping our children out of school, Mr. Speaker. It's always the same with him. There's no plan. It's just peddling one thing to his union friends and another thing to the British people. Speaker, my honourable friend is absolutely right. We are now just this weekend, Mr. Speaker, for an average person in work, cutting their taxes by £450, Mr. Speaker. In Wales, where Labour are in charge, they're raising them, with businesses there now seeing double the rate of business rates this year, Mr. Speaker. And it's the same in Scotland under the SNP, the new high-tax capital of the United Kingdom, because of the SNP's tax hiking decisions. So, Mr. Speaker, while we've got a plan and cutting your taxes, it's Labour and the SNP that are going to raise them.
Mr. Speaker, back in 2022, when Boris Johnson claimed he would send asylum seekers to Rwanda, one ambitious Tory MP had reservations. He agreed with Labour that it wouldn't work. It was a waste of money. It was the latest in a long line of gimmicks. Does the Prime Minister know what happened to that MP?
Well, Mr. Speaker, what that honourable gentleman refers to is a document that he hasn't seen, I haven't seen, and has been reported second-hand in a bunch of media newspapers. But what I can tell him is, I am absolutely clear that you do need to stop the boats, and that's what this government and that MP is going to deliver.
I notice he didn't deny it, Mr. Speaker. I'm not surprised. £400 million of taxpayer money down the drain. No one sent to Rwanda. Small boats still coming. It's hardly a surprise he wanted to scrap the scheme when he was trying to sneak in as Tory leader. But he's been caught red-handed opposing the very thing that he's now made his flagship policy. Which member should we listen to? The one before us today, or the one who used to believe in something? He spends the whole time trying to convince people not to believe their own eyes, pretending that debt is falling, that the economy is going gangbusters, the NHS is in great shape. When he finally finds something he was right about, the Rwanda gimmick, he can't even take credit for it. When's he going to stop pretending that up is down, that black is white, admit that whether it's the economy, immigration, the NHS, he has failed?
Mr. Speaker, well, let's just go through his checklist. He talks about the backlog, 112,000 decisions made last year, a higher number than in any year in the past 2 decades, Mr. Speaker. He talked about hotels. Well, the first 50 are being closed and there are more to come, Mr. Speaker. He talks about the numbers. Well, they were down by over a third last year, Mr. Speaker, the first time that's happened. And then he talked, Mr. Speaker, he talked about smashing the gangs. Well, if he does care about smashing the gangs, why doesn't he own up to the fact that when it came to the Nationality and Borders Act, he blocked, delayed and voted against the powers in that act, which have allowed us to now arrest hundreds and hundreds of people connected with that illegal trade who have been sentenced to hundreds of years in prison. He opposed that because he chooses the criminal gangs over the British people every time. This is a person who described all immigration law as racist, Mr. Speaker. He thinks limits on economic migration are, in his words, economic vandalism. It didn't even feature once in his 5 missions, and he didn't mention it once in his conference speech. The truth is, he's pro-free movement, he's anti-border control, and he can never be trusted to stop the boat.
I think we should smash the gangs. And I spent 5 years of my life, 5 years of my life doing exactly. This is the party that's lost control of the borders. And whilst he's tending to the Tory party, the country is left without government. A collapse in dentistry, leaving people literally pulling out their own teeth. Flood defences completely exposed. Hundreds of thousands of children still out of school. His government appears blissfully uninterested in what's going on outside the walls of Westminster. Does he realise how ludicrous it looks when he spends his time boasting whilst Britain is breaking? He just doesn't get it. He doesn't get what a cost of living crisis feels like. He doesn't know any schools where kids no longer turn up. And he doesn't understand what it's like to wait for a hospital appointment. Doesn't the country deserve so much better than a Prime Minister who simply doesn't get Britain?
Mr. Speaker, well, from the last week we had, I say, yet another half-hour speech from the Honourable Gentleman, and what a surprise, yet again, it didn't contain a single new idea. We've had 4 years of him as Labour leader, and it's still all slogan, no plan, Mr. Speaker. Now, just this weekend, Mr. Speaker, just this weekend, we're delivering on our plan to cut people's taxes, Mr. Speaker. He doesn't have a plan. We've got a plan to stop the boats. He doesn't have a plan. And we've got a plan to get people off welfare and into work. He doesn't have a single idea. It's crystal clear, Mr. Speaker. Stick with us to deliver the long-term change that the country needs.